Hey, hello guys, welcome back to our channel CA Minds Easy CA Coaching. Today we are going to start about calls in arrears and calls in advance and forfeiture of shares. Well, before coming to this video, please have a look on our previous videos on company accounts and also on other subjects. The links will be provided in the description below. The one who is seeing our channel for the first time, please like, share and subscribe. So, what are you waiting for? Let's go. Let us discuss about calls in arrears. As we have discussed in our first video, company accounts, calls in arrears means when a shareholder fails to pay the amount which is called up by the company, like non-payment of allotment shares, equity share, first call, final call, second call, etc. Then they are called as calls in arrears. Well, such amount represents the uncollected amount of capital from the shareholders. Hence, it is shown by way of deduction from called up capital to arrive as at paid up value of the share capital. What is the journal entry behind calls in arrears? Since calls in arrears is a type of loss for a company, then it would calls in arrears would be debited and the unpaid calls such as share allotment, share calls is to be credited. Why we credited share allotment and share calls account? Because since a shareholder fails to pay any money related to allotment or call money, the value of the call money so expected or the amount of allotment so expected decreases, since due to his failure of paying the money. So these accounts are credited. Then we have to debit bank account for the amount received from that particular shareholder. So the entry will be bank account debited, calls in arrears account debited, to share allotment account, to share call account. It's not compulsory to write share allotment and share call account. When a shareholder fails to pay only allotment money, then you have to write only to share call allotment account. If he fails to pay both share allotment and share call account, you have to write to share allotment account to share call account. So let us go to the next topic, calls in advance. So what is calls in advance? Shareholders may sometimes pay a part or whole of the future installments at the present day. Then such money is called as calls in advance. So what would be the entry over here? Since we debit calls in arrears, we have to credit calls in advance. Credit calls in advance. Then you have to debit bank account debited, because we are the receiver. So present entry would be this: when such installment is declared by the company, such as for example when a company declares first call money, then the calls in advance would be debited and the particular call would be credited. Since the company is receiving the money, the bank account of the company is debited. So the entry would be calls in advance debited, bank account debited to particular call account. So this is about calls in advance. Then there may be a situation where like in the case of calls in arrears, the loss may be sometimes huge, so that it cannot be recovered. Then in such respect of calls in arrears, the interest is put by the company so that the shareholder pays the calls in arrears along with the interest. So what is the interest on calls in arrears? The interest on calls in arrears would be 10%. It has to be borne by the shareholder for his non-payment of the installment declared by the company. Such interest rate is prescribed in Table F of Companies Act. Then here also there is a case of journal entry. So the journal entry would be shareholders account debited to interest on calls in arrears. Let me write it. Shareholders account debited to interest on calls in arrears account. So how to remember the entry? Well, calls in arrears is like a loss for a company, so we recover such loss in the form of interest on calls in arrears. So the interest on calls in arrears is credited, whereas the shareholder account is debited because we receive from him. So the shareholders account is debited. Since it is the interest on CEIA account is credited, automatically the shareholders account is debited. This is the way to remember this entry. When the interest is received, then the entry would be bank account debited to shareholders account. Since bank account is an asset, compared to an asset, so it is debited since the value is increasing after the interest is received, and the giver here is the shareholder. So the shareholder account is credited. You have to write the narration as being interest money received. You have to write narration for every journal entry in the company accounts unless it is mentioned. So let us go in the to the topic interest on calls in advance. Well, in the case of interest on calls in arrears, the shareholder has to pay us the interest of 10 rupees as per table F of Companies Act 2013. Well, in the case of interest on calls in advance, we have to pay 12% of interest to the shareholder who has prepaid the installment amount before the money is called by the company. This interest 12% is prescribed in Table F of Companies Act 2013. Well, journal entries in this case is we have in the case of calls in advance entry, we have in the first entry we have credited the calls in advance account and debited the bank account. Here you have to do is interest on calls in advance should be debited and shareholder account to be credited. Well, this is the way of remembering the entry, whereas the payment of interest would be, the journal entry would be shareholder account is the receiver, so debited, to bank account we are the giver, so it is credited. So these are the entries in the case of interest on calls in arrears and calls in advance. Please remember that calls in arrears, the interest is 10% that has to be paid by the shareholder, whereas in the case of calls in advance, the interest would be 12% paid by the company. So, have a brief look on this concept again if you have any doubts. So, let us go to the concept forfeiture of shares. But before going into the topic, let us understand what is forfeiture. Forfeiture means taking away of property. Of any asset of other person. Forfeiture may happen when a person becomes insolvent. The forfeiture is taken by the court, who has appointed a special person to forfeit all his property. So the forfeiture meaning is that thing. Now, what is forfeiture of shares? Forfeiture of shares means when a person fails to pay any amount regarding allotment, final. Let me write it again. When a person fails to pay allotment, final call, money, then the company would take away his shares for the non-payment then such taking away of property is called as forfeiture of shares. Well, this is the meaning of forfeiture of shares. What are the journal entries? When forfeiture of shares are issued at par, forfeiture of shares are issued at premium. Let us look into that. Issued at par. Issued at par. Well, in the case of issued at par, the share capital account would be debited, whereas the amount due accounts such as share allotment account to share call account will be credited, and forfeited shares account would be credited. So instead of writing to share allotment to share call account, you can together write it as to calls in arrears account. The entry would be together altogether as share capital account debited to calls in arrears account to forfeited share account. So, well, here's the entry. You might wonder why the calls in arrears is credited. Since the forfeiture of shares is taken place, the amount due which but has not been paid will be transferred to calls in arrears account. So instead of debited, the account would get credited. So the entry comes like this. What happens when there's a case of premium when the shares issued at premium? When the shares are issued at premium, the entry would be shares capital account debited to share allotment account to share first call or share call account. To forfeited share account. So you may have a doubt, when should the securities premium should be debited or credited? If the premium is not received but yet to be received, then the securities premium would be debited when not received. When the securities premium is credited, it is credited when the premium is received. So in the case of premium not received, the entry would be share capital account debited securities premium account debited to share allotment when it is not received, to share call account when it is not received, to forfeited share account. When the premium is received, you need not debit securities premium nor credit the securities premium. You just need not to write the securities premium. Well, this is the entry when premium is received. When the premium is not received, the securities premium must be debited. This must be remembered. Do not get confused. The problems would be discussed in the next video. Thank you very much for viewing my video. Please like, share and subscribe our channel for more interesting updates and ICI announcements, notes, etc. The one who is seeing our channel, please go through the links which are given in the description, and please like, share and subscribe our channel. Thank you.